Last night we touched the skies, a blend of mushrooms, I could feel it in my head. Ribs I had seen, we've been laughing all night. Drank till the last glass we could barely see. It was so brighter to see. The darkness is falling all over my face. Memories fading away like angry birds, reaching for a place where my voice would never reach. Can you hear my crying heart, reaching for the stars above the skies? My voice will never sound like it used to do, 'cause I can only cry for her one more night, for her one more night, yeah, for.
Vani, you're on.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Fireside chat today. So here we are to talk about when life gives you lemons. So we've got pictures of all sorts of lemons here. My name is Vani, and I'm from Rebound, Africa. So we're here with the lovely Julia and Carabo to talk about how do you reinvent yourself when life gives you lemons. A little bit about myself. I'm a mother of three, and I took a career break myself. I'm an accountant by training, though that's not what I do these days. I'm a director at Startup Malaysia, which basically works on projects to bring down barriers to entrepreneurship for people. I'm also a founder of TechSprint, which is Malaysia's first women-only coding academy. And I've been the chief architect of Rebound, which is a career comeback program, as well as a program to help more women to get into tech. So what is Rebound? So it's an initiative to support women in the SADC region to embrace digital economy through entrepreneurship and technology skills, so that you can become stronger and more resilient in a post-pandemic world. We initially rolled Rebound out in 2020 and 2021 in Asia, and we had over 1,600 women attend our various programs. And in view of its success and relevance, Rebound, we are spreading our wings to the SADC region, and we are working actively with the Hypergroup to support women-led businesses in the region. And we are very pleased to announce that the first program will be rolling out in Zambia and South Africa and Botswana in September, October 2022. So look out for our call for applications. There are two main pillars to Rebound, which is career and entrepreneurship. So primarily, we are here to support women transitioning from informal to formal businesses, digitization of women-owned and led businesses, and increasing the number of women in the tech industry, and increasing access to finance and markets for women-owned led businesses. So that's what Rebound Africa is meant to do. And why is this important? So as per the recent Inc. Africa article, Africa is the next growth frontier in technology. And the size of the African digital economy is meant to grow substantially from $115 billion to $712 billion in 2050. Now, that's a huge growth. Now, as women, we don't want to be left out of it. So we want to be a part of it. How do you do that? You future-proof yourself, you embrace change, have a learner's mindset, and reinvent yourself. Because any change requires reinvention. And there's only one thing that makes a dream impossible to achieve: the fear of failure. A lot of times, we are afraid to change anything, we are afraid to do anything because we are afraid of failure. And how do you overcome this? So we can actually, if some of you, whether you are in having your own business or whether you're working, it's always good to have an entrepreneurial mindset. And one of the main theories, which is the current trending thinking for entrepreneurs, is the theory of effectuation. So it is an approach to making decisions and performing actions in entrepreneurship processes. And the fundamental worldview is be the pilot in the plane. The future, see the future as something you can influence by your own actions. You can create your own opportunities. So these are some principles that I borrow and that I found useful, and I always encourage our women to actually use. The first principle is bird in hand. Hang on, we're having a little technical glitch here. Okay, that you have to create, so you have to create solutions with the resources that that are available here and now. So how do you apply this? You look within and around you. What are your strengths, your capabilities, and resources that you already have, and make the most out of it? The lemonade principle: mistakes and surprises are inevitable, and you can use them to look for new opportunities instead of thinking in negative terms of it. And make the most of your mistakes. Learn from them, and it's okay to fail, because the failure is your project or your business, not of yourself. Crazy quilt: partnerships can bring the projects into new directions. Network, look for mentors, talk to others and learn from them. You're not alone. And last but not least, affordable loss. You should only invest as much as you're willing to lose. Know what your risks are and know when to let go. And last but not least, be kind to yourself and in the process of doing that. So nothing in life is to be feared. It's only to be understood. So without further ado, let me pass you on to Julia and Karabo for our lovely discussion today. Julia epitomizes whatever that I've just said now about reinventing yourself. Over to you guys, or ladies, rather. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bani. Good evening, everyone. I'm Karabo Murule, the founder of Capital Arts. It's an art fintech company that is the first art collection management service that is focused on collectors of modern and contemporary African art. And I jumped into entrepreneurship after a 15-year career in financial services across investment banking and insurance, with my last role being as MD of the listed financial services conglomerate, Old Mutual. But onto the person you came here for, and just reading about Julia's career is kind of really resonated with me. So I'm really glad that Visa and the Hybrid team invited me to kind of be the person to chat with her on everybody else's behalf, but we will have a Q&A at the end. Yeah, so Julia Rafaeli is an experienced CEO with a demonstrated track record working in the publishing and media industry in South Africa over the last 35 years. Having run a family business for a large part of that time, she had to make the difficult decision to close the business shortly after the lockdown in April 2020. And at this time, she was the majority shareholder. Despite having transformed the business from a single channel to a multi-channel business, it was not feasible to continue. Shortly afterwards, Julia was approached by one of the largest telco companies to launch a women's media brand in this exciting future-led space. Julia and her business partner, Lee Kinross, started to think about a healthier, smarter way to produce and publish content in this mobile space, and subsequently launched their business, Paradigm Connect. This is a new business, and it's essentially a content hub, but operating in a much more dynamic and streamlined way to deliver a more cost-effective, creative solution. Having had the advantage of many years in experience in the media space, as well as an incredible team of freelancers, the best of the best, whom they continue to work with on all projects. Her focus has always been to spotlight the creative talent that resides in South Africa and the region. To do this, she has built a strong local and global network through working with international brands. She's a firm believer in the strength of one's network, combined with many learnings from running a business, and as she says, a few scars, which put her in an ideal position to reset and restart with a brand new post-COVID and opportunistic mindset. So warm welcome to you, Julia.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that introduction, and lovely to be here.
Yeah, it's really great. So I'm going to kick off on a couple of questions, and then we are going to leave some questions, time for questions at the end. So for those who have got questions to ask, you're welcome to put some in the chat, and hopefully we'll just be tracking those as they come along during the conversations, but there will be time at the end. So I think just to anchor our conversation, and so the audience sort of has a frame of reference, it would be great to cover briefly your career journey. You've had some interesting experiences since varsity, so perhaps we start there and with what you did after matric until about now. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So let me start with the question that everybody always, asks, and that's like, when you work in a family business, was there any pressure to enter the family business? And I have to say, no, there wasn't any specific pressure, but it was something that was just always sort of dinner time conversation. It kind of like lands up being part of your DNA. And I went for undergrad to the University of Cape Town, and then I worked in advertising, which was an aligned industry. Just for anybody on the chat, like, I didn't really know exactly where I wanted to end up, but I knew I wanted to be in media. And so I started in advertising, and then I went back to study postgrad in New York at NYU. And again, that was just an excuse, because I knew I couldn't get there any other way than to study, because my father would only invest in my education, not in me taking a gap year. So I found a way to get to New York, and then I came back and started working in the family business. But I worked in so many different positions before I actually ended up running the business. And over that period of time, I think it was 28 years. So, we had so many incredible opportunities. I mean, working with Oprah herself by publishing her magazine, and on the ground here, we were the only country to actually have that opportunity, which was so amazing. But what I have to say about those 28 years is, you end up working so hard that, it's not like you're just floating around. I mean, it was a lot of slog. And although the industry seems very glamorous, it's actually like there was a lot of, when you're producing publications which expire on the newsstand every month, and you have these deadlines, and it was entirely, a family-owned business. So we were basically funding it. And I think what I can say is, there was always a massive focus on education, but also hard work. My father's a textile manufacturer, so they don't believe in bunking. We were brought up with a working ethic, by a role model in my mother, who was a businesswoman and a fiercely, like, a protector of all women's rights and empowering women. And she used her position, in the publishing industry to always, force that agenda. And that was my role model. And, that's kind of where you learn at your mother's knee. And she always had these incredible sort of witty one-liners, which I'll tell you about. And that's part of how you learn, is by actually doing it. I don't think you learn theoretical business. You learn how to actually be in business by running business. And what's also interesting, and maybe we'll get to it later, but when we made the decision to close the business, I was the majority shareholder and I was funding the business. And the biggest lessons I learned was when I funded the business myself. Funnily enough, even if it's family money, it's different to when it's your own money. And we can also talk a little bit about timing a bit later and knowing when to get out. That has a whole different meaning when you're in a family business. Very difficult to know when to get out because you're so passionate about what you do, which is actually a privilege to be in any industry or any job. And I don't think you'll survive or be successful if you're not passionate.
Absolutely, yeah. Somebody in the chat wrote an excellent way to get to New York, Julia, which I agree with. And it's great to have that grounding of a focus on education. So it's one of those ones where it's an investment that has great reward, which I think a lot of us appreciate. So about your time in New York, it's a bit of a segue from my main focus, but you spent some time on the Joan Rivers show. And she's an incredible icon in the US entertainment industry. And she also spoke quite a bit about being a woman in a male-dominated environment, being stand-up comedy. Any learnings from her during your short time there?
Yes. Okay, inside track. So
yes, please.
I always loved Joan Rivers, and I'd read her book. And this is another example of something that's very important, and it's called chutzpah. And that is a sort of a Yiddish word, Jewish slang word. And the definition is like extreme self-confidence or audacity. And that means like you always just believe in yourself enough to make that cold call. And we actually had this as one of our values in our business. Nobody really knew what chutzpah meant, but anyway, and how I got to Joan Rivers. When I was at NYU, they had an internship and you could apply anywhere. And I just thought, I like her. She was married to a South African. They got divorced actually, but she was married to a South African who came from Rondebosch, the area around Rondebosch. And I just decided that I was going to use the system to get what I want, which was experience in an internship, which would count for my degree, but it was in television. And we had 2 tapings at 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock. And she arrived at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and she did not look like what she looked like when she went on screen. But what I learned from her, I suppose, is the importance of a sense of humor. And I think in business, there are so many highs and lows. There is no shortcut. It's a roller coaster. You're going to have successes. You're going to have failures. You can't take it too seriously that you lose your sense of humor entirely. And believe me, when you have huge responsibility, which is usually attached to the financial responsibility, like paying salaries for people and overheads, etc., it is hard to retain your sense of humor. And she did definitely inspire me to retain mine. And I don't know, she was just, I don't know if people are really familiar with her anymore, but I just loved what she stood for. So I decided I was going to go and try to meet her, and I did.
That's so amazing. Yeah. And I think it dates us, but she's a remarkable icon. So it's somebody who's wonderful to look up to for sure. I also really, really admired her work. Yeah. So Vani spoke about rebounds. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about Paradigm Correct and that rebound/reinvention experience that you're having there, because there are probably many people who are going to be inspired by starting a new company and transitioning into something totally new after a very successful corporate career. And I know that's kind of me as well right now, kind of having had this role. And so that's quite inspiring, and it resonated with me quite a lot. So please share that with us. Yeah.
Okay, so I can't share what came after without sharing what came before. And I think, closing a family business is quite a complex, difficult decision to make. And also a visible industry business that, we were in the media. So it had to be quite carefully handled. We always used to say that our name is on the door. And that, I think with a few years before COVID, we were already trying to transition the business. And it was almost like taking this massive tanker, which was traditionally print, and turning this tanker around. But what was great about that time is we were always very keen to innovate. And we were already changing our business model, but it was almost like refueling while flying. Okay, I've gone from a tanker to an aeroplane, but it was almost like it was a very difficult transition because people are naturally very resistant to change. And we had a lot of editorial people and creative people, and we had to kind of, even how digital has transformed not only the ability to touch the consumer on a daily, minute-by-minute basis, but it also makes what we do highly measurable. And before, in the industry like ours, in the magazine world, it wasn't really measurable. I mean, you had your sales on the newsstand and your advertising sales as well. But digital wasn't such a welcome addition to a lot of people in our business, because we had to change that mindset and the way we operate. But we had started before COVID. Then when lockdown happened, I think what it did do is it brought incredible clarity, because we knew that we couldn't print our product at that point. We couldn't distribute our product. We knew that the advertisers were going to struggle to see value, and we didn't know when that period would change and we'd go back, but we knew it wouldn't be 3 weeks or a short period. Yeah. So the actual process of making that difficult decision was 10 days. I know it sounds very short, but if I tell you that before we went into lockdown, when we actually shut the office doors and everybody went into lockdown, we actually had not considered closing our business. But somehow, when we were faced with the facts and so much uncertainty in a business that was already compromised, it wasn't like you were going in with a strong, healthy balance sheet and you could afford to kind of like just keep it going for 1, 2, 3 years. We had to make that decision quite quickly, and I'm really glad we did. And we did it in a way that we felt comfortable as a family, and also how I felt like we handled it in the best way that we possibly could, and that we could sleep at night. And I really think that, your reputation and your brand, your own brand, is what's going to last. And you have to make sure that you operate with integrity. And it sounds really like cliched or easy or blasé, but it's almost like that North Star that you have to stick to, even when it's difficult times, because that's what's going to last, And I think because we had an incredible reputation, which was started by my mom, and then obviously we followed as second generation, and my sister was also in the business for a long part of the time, and she had a huge role to play also in building up the business. She was on the editorial side and I was on the business side. And I think that once we closed the business and made that difficult decision, and we used to, whenever anyone was sick, we would send them chicken soup. And this was a situation where we couldn't even see people to tell them that we were closing an almost 40-year-old business. We had to send an email out with a press release, which was very, very not our norm. Anyway, once we got over that, I was just approached via LinkedIn by Vodacom, and we started to talk about developing a women's media brand for them. So looking at the market and saying, Cosmo is no longer, and really that whole market has just provided us with a massive gap to recreate this new media brand. And it's going to have like a similar objective, which is to build and empower young African women here and in the region. And who better to do it with than a Vodacom? And anyway, so it started as a meeting. And that's the other thing, is you never know, where a meeting's going to end up. So when you have like this opportunistic mindset, I always meet with people, because if there's an opportunity to be had, between win-win opportunity, I'm sure I'll find it, having that right kind of just, I suppose, attitude. Nothing is a waste of time. Anyway, we started with that, and I don't want to carry on too much about it, but what's been absolutely incredible is taking the learnings of publishing in an old model and not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but now applying those learnings. So whatever you've learned up until this point, take out the best and apply it to the way that you're going to go forward. And I mean, at the end of the day, you have a much more sustainable, future-led model on the mobile phone. I mean, it's something we would have dreamed of in publishing, but we couldn't quite get there. And then now, post-COVID, post-lockdown, post-liquidation of the business, we started again from a clean slate. And just to sort of summarize, I mean, I think it enabled us to close one chapter with, some grace and gratitude, and make way for a totally new chapter. And that's why we named our business Paradigm Connect, because it was all about how paradigms shift.
That's true. And that's really kind of great what you mentioned around the fact that, when you're thinking about something new, it's always important to just reflect on the gifts that you got from your previous experiences, because those can be very, very applicable to where you're going. But I think you also highlighted the very, very important point around the fact that change is very difficult for people. And sometimes you can have the will to change, but it might not work. And having kind of this external stimulus in a way, even though it was, very negative experience for many people, is what kind of really sparked that. And that resonates with me a lot because, working in a big insurer and trying to kind of innovate around changes in distribution channels, and having people who reflect on the fact that there's one distribution channel in your business which is as old as the business, it means it's very difficult to change. So that resonates with me quite a lot. Yeah. And you touched on a little bit about the care that you took with the whole process around the liquidation, because, you obviously imagine every entrepreneur will experience failure. We've got statistics like 90% of businesses fail. And at some point that will mean some sort of kind of, very traumatic experience, like a business rescue or liquidation or something familiar like retrenchments, etc. And I don't know if there's anything more to share around that experience and having the care with a company that is like a family business, when I know many entrepreneurs think of their startups as like their babies. So, that link is very much there in terms of the emotional connection to a business. I don't know if there's anything else that you can share in terms of kind of how you thought about that process, and the fact that it was a very quick one. I think that's maybe something to take into consideration around making, being so agile and making decisions quickly, and not necessarily being too attached to the emotion around it, to make sure you're saving it. Is that something that was, playing in your minds as you were going through that process? How does you make sure that they also don't lose their shit when shutting down a business?
Look, I think there's no easy way to go through that process. And I mean, attempting to say it was easy, smooth sailing is just sugarcoating what is actually super tough. But I think that, it's almost like if you've got that muscle, you just get up and start again. It's like half full versus half empty attitude. And that is a very much an entrepreneurial attitude as well. So it's just, you get back on the bus. I think you've got to just go through the process. That's also something I've learned in business, is to sleep on stuff, and to really just allow yourself that opportunity to process properly, because you'll get to the right decision. Obviously, it was important, like treating our staff and suppliers with respect, because a lot of them had supported us for so long. But you do what you can do. You get advised by your lawyer or whoever it is, somebody who's handling the liquidation. And I mean, those guys, guys and girls, I mean, I'm sure there seem to be more men in that business, but guys and girls, whoever, they've done this. This is what they do day in and day out. So they are very unsympathetic. And they almost look at you with like, what? You want to do that? I mean, but just again, it comes down to, first of all, so many people had worked in our business and had, like almost the time of their life, like growing up. And they, you don't want to destroy that memory, like by doing something stupid, like not treating it with as much care as you can within a difficult situation. But what I would say also is, just having a sort of a very close people around you who you trust, who you can share confidence with, to make sure that you audit your decision appropriately if you have to make that kind of very big decision. And maybe just also something for your audience. I belong to a few organizations, quite selective. And one of them, is the Young Presidents Organization. And I've been in that organization for 18 years, and it's a global organization. But one of the cornerstones of that organization is this confidentiality that's almost like understood. And I think one has to be careful what one shares with people. It's almost like in a situation like that, and with our small team, we made sure we knew exactly what we wanted to say. And I also didn't give any interviews when at the point at which we made the announcement, because I just felt like we had said what we needed to say, and it would almost compromise everything. And we kept the message very, we thought a lot about the press release, and we kept to that message. So I think that also in this particular world that we live in today, where people share randomly, and when you are in a profession and you go through a difficult time, like successes and failures, one has to just be totally careful about what you send out into the world, because not everybody is going to use it in a positive way. So it's almost like less is more. And I would say that's something like, just to make sure that you are completely like on top of what you want to do in the process, and you stick to your guns, and just make sure that if you do have to make those difficult decisions, you can sleep at night. I said it before, but I think that would have been the most difficult thing, because Cape Town is a pond, South Africa is actually a pond as well, and the world is like a pond these days. So like, I just don't want to not be able to show up and hold my head up high. And I I think I learned that being in a family business, where we felt very strongly about that.
And so, just touching on YPO, maybe you can talk about the benefit of networks. Because that's something which actually people sometimes shy away from, and also you take into consideration, some people are extroverts, some people are introverts. Introverts feel so much anxiety about these types of networks, but maybe you can just talk about the benefit of them, because I think that's something which is an underrated tool that's used by entrepreneurs and actually everyone, even if people in corporate who are executives.
Absolutely. And I mean, we need more women in organizations like that, because they still do struggle. And one of the reasons they struggle is that a woman has very little time. And if she's choosing to have kids, then she doesn't like seek out these opportunities to join like a global organization, which is just going to give her another whole set of responsibilities. So what happens is they have a different career trajectory, and then they want to join later an organization. But actually, like anything, you need time in the organization to meet the people and also understand what value you can get out of it. So what I would say is, it really is important to be in these kind of networks, preferably global. And I think that the opportunity to reach out to people globally is so much better now than it was 18 or 20 years ago. But another thing is, I've always kind of believed in men and women being in the same organization, because I don't want to just talk to other women, I want to talk to people. And I think that's how men learn from women and women learn from men. And for me, I always feel that more women should be not only at the top table, but they must be comfortable being at the top table. And if it requires finding a mentor, or someone to almost take you through that growth process, where you start to feel very comfortable because you're in your sweet spot. I think with a lot of people, men and women, just men are more used to like going with the flow, or they don't feel that imposter syndrome as much as women seem to, with all the juggle and all the multiple responsibilities. But I think the thing is that, you know, when you position yourself in an organization that can open up your world, opportunities will come to you. Because if I think about it, I think there are 28,000 people in YPO, for example.
Wow.
But you also, another lesson that I've learned is the more of a role you play in the organization, the more you understand the organization. If you remain peripheral, which people who are shyer, they don't want to put up their hand, they're not like a natural networker. I think try to find the way that you can network in a comfortable way for yourself. So maybe LinkedIn, for example. A lot of people even shy away from LinkedIn. But, you know, you can do a course on LinkedIn. You can find somebody to hold your hand and help you post what's appropriate and what feels right for you, because that is a business networking platform. It's not Facebook. It's not Instagram. It's not Twitter. But all of these channels are available to you. But maybe for people who are not naturally inclined, you know, try and find a mentor who can actually guide you through it. And then you just put your finger in, you know, you don't have to jump all in, because then it might be too scary or you hold back. But it's funny. I mean, networking is kind of a thing which I think, my mother was a networker. I find it quite easy. And I think it's about understanding when you network, it is all about the win-win. So you don't approach people with something only where you benefit. There's got to be a win-win. And the more you build up, look, it was a lot easier having brands like Cosmo because people wanted to do business with us. And, you know, it was a well-known brand. So you go knocking on a door and people are more likely to respond. So I think that is an unusual situation, but it's almost like a muscle. You've just got to like get fit, you know, you've got to practice it. You've got to try it out a few times. And I promise you, eventually, at my ripe old age, it just becomes like that muscle. It's what you do naturally, and business sort of starts to come to you organically. And when it comes to you in that way, it's always got a better outcome than when you either trying to flog something or trying to get something from someone, versus a more organic process. So just start somewhere and look at what other people do. Look at what, you know, decide what you want from a platform like LinkedIn. Do you want to be a thought leader? In which case you're going to have to produce quite a lot of content. If you have the resources where you can get somebody to package the content properly for you, or do a course, learn how to do it properly, because it is really important that you don't flood your feed with inappropriate content.
Agree. Help people to frame how they should view you. And I think with networking, you know, one of the few times where I think this phrase is appropriate is fake it till you make it. You know, there's many other things you must not fake, but networking and working that skill is one of the ones where I think, you know, project that outward, and I think eventually you'll kind of get the gist of it. Absolutely. So I follow the photographer Misan Harrison on Instagram, and he posted an interview of someone asking him about the September 2020 issue of British Vogue, where he was the first Black man to do the cover shoot of the September issue in the 104 history of British Vogue. So the image was related to the Black Lives Matter protests in the US and the UK, and Misan captured a number of images related to the protests that occurred in the UK and in London specifically. And when he was asked about this momentous occasion, he remarked, "Edward Enninful is a queer Black man that is the most powerful man in the fashion industry as we speak, and was in a powerful enough position to make a decision that few would." And he ended up on the cover of Time magazine, which doesn't happen often for fashion editors, close quote. So, you know, you've been a trailblazer yourself. Maybe you can cover the ways in which you've also used your power to highlight those who didn't have power due to, you know, societal constructs, people who should have just had a far more equal footing in the world.
Well, I think you need a platform to do that, you know, and when we had Cosmo, I remember we did the first ever transgender cover of it, you know, with Laverne Cox. Wow. And it was the first time that an actress had ever been on a cover of an international glossy magazine, and South African Cosmo was the first one to actually run with it. And I think, that was so right in terms of timing. But we did have the platform, and that brand and the platforms that were associated with it, which could carry and drive a conversation that really mattered, came from years and years of building up that brand. Yeah. So I think that one has to use the platforms that one has available, but in a very considered way, because you can also get yourself in very tricky situations, especially like on Twitter. If you have an opinion that's not considered or not well thought through. And I think that was also, we sometimes got ourselves into tricky waters as well. Like on Marie Claire, we ran a story and we had men in heels, and they were actually, it was all around supporting women. But two of them had kind of dodgy reputations and dodgy things had happened. And it just blew up. So I think, one doesn't do it oneself if you're in the media. You use your brands. And now with Glow, this women's media brand, which you subscribe to only if you're a Vodacom customer. So I don't want people to go look and be disappointed. But the objective for us, Lee and myself in Paradigm, is to build this brand, this platform, this audience, and be able to use that platform to drive these really important conversations that matter. And when you have, first of all, a need to do that, because there are so many challenges and issues that are so antiquated and in the old, they should have been resolved by now, but they aren't. It's an ongoing conversation that you have with your audience. But that's because I come from that brand building mindset. So in terms of people, an individual, I suppose it's really up to them. And there are a lot of people with a lot of opinions. But I would say just be, well, I don't know, for me personally, I don't like to get into a space which is just a bullying space where people don't like your opinion, and there's a lot of, bullying that goes on. But I do think that either associating with brands that have got a similar agenda to yourself, like if you want to find these kind of role models, or share the stories, because it is all about storytelling of people who have it's sharing other people's stories that also create a lot of impact, because other people read those stories, they see those stories. And I think that's almost why I love what we do, because it is around content, and it does give you the opportunity to share people's stories and create an emotional connection with your audience. And that audience, women, want it, because we do operate from a community point of view, and we do love sharing information, and we actually want to help other people. So I think there's so many ways to do it. You can do it from a personal point of view by being part of a community which is aligned to your values. You can do it in your job if you choose to go into this kind of business, like a media business or content business. You can follow people and contribute to the conversation there. There are really multiple opportunities these days.
Cool. So I see we've got about 15 minutes left. I thought we'll kind of maybe segue there and leave it over to any questions that members in the audience have. And I saw there was a question in the chat that Salu asked. So I think let's give Salu the opportunity to unmute and then ask her question, if she can. I don't know if Yolisa, that's possible. Otherwise, I'll ask her question for her. Or him.
Oh, sorry, I put the video instead of the mic. Hi, Julia.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really loving your story, and I'm just really loving how expressive you are. And really, these are the kind of interviews that I think really should be reaching, women entrepreneurs, women dreamers, and the like. So my question for you was, how difficult or important was it for you to put business over emotions when it was time to shut down? Because that couldn't have been easy. So how do you handle that whole process?
I think it is very difficult and almost impossible to separate them out. I mean, yeah, it's just, I suppose, putting your head down. Once you know, once you've made the decision, then you have to move forward and move forward, basically. There is no other way. You can't hesitate or back down. But I don't think it's possible to separate out when you're passionate about what you do, and you've been in the business a long time, and you're very attached to the outcome of that business, to separate out your emotions from the business. But I think that one, as a professional, kind of almost fine-tunes the professional side of you. It's almost like, even when you go through difficult sort of retrenchments or something like that, you have to be professional always. You almost can't be ruled by emotion. And also when you're a leader, people don't look to you for an emotional reaction. They look for like confidence that you have got, you're going to make a decision that's in the interests. And I think we always operated like that. I don't know if this answers your question. On the personal side, and I really believe like this is almost like a very intimate forum. So I'm very happy to share, because it's like this fireside chat. And I think you must always be authentic and not just try to give a polished version of events. But just as an aside, as a mother, I had my kids quite late, and I had twins. And I remember always feeling guilty with my mom saying to her, I feel guilty and I'm not picking them up from school. I'm not doing this. And I used to leave in the morning at 7 o'clock, and I would come home at about 6 o'clock. And then obviously, you carry on working later. And my husband, when we made the decision to close, he just kept saying to me, you're actually only going to appreciate afterwards that this was a good decision for you. And before, he had always said to me, it's your own business. You can leave at 2 o'clock, you can work in the morning. And I just couldn't, because it was my own business. And I didn't know how to operate in that way. Of course, with COVID, everybody's working in a much more dynamic, flexi way. So, one's become used to that. But what I can say is that post-COVID and starting again, one of the biggest things that I'm grateful for is that it's given me an opportunity to still work, because I love working, and build a new business with a fantastic partner. But also it's given me the ability to be part of my kids' lives. And I know that sounds like weird, but I mean, it's something that I didn't think about. I just became a busy fool. And what I would also say to people on this chat is, don't let yourself become a busy fool, because you're just busy, and you don't look at like, what am I getting out of this? And I think that what I've got into and the situation I'm in now is I'm still passionate. I still don't separate out my business and my, my emotions, but I always try and be professional. And that's probably the most important thing when you're running a business, when you're closing a business, when you're leading a business. You just have to be professional.
Absolutely. So there's also another question which was asked about like LinkedIn profiles and packaging one in terms of a personal brand. So maybe you could give some advice about that. That was from Nolundi.
I'd love to help you, but I'm probably not the best person for the job. You actually need to find somebody who does that as a sort of that's what they do. Like we've got our own Instagram where we post obviously stuff about Paradigm, and I run that, and I'm actually not very good at it. So, you mustn't ever be afraid to learn. I think I'm going to do an Instagram course, because in the old days, we had a lot of people and resources. We had 120 people, sort of like looking after our brands and our business and the content. And, when you're running the business, you just operating from the top, you like doing the last 20%, which actually makes 80% of difference, but you don't get involved in the actual creation of a lot of the content. So, I mean, I would say find somebody or a course, or one's got to just upskill, and there are so many different options there. Some are free and they just want your information. Better if you can get a reference from somebody else who you know in your circle, who has used somebody to help them, because also there are a lot of not great people out there. But all I'm saying is I'm learning just like everyone else. So, I mean, I think the main thing is for me to use all of these platforms. That's the only way that you actually can see where the opportunity is. You've got to be using them yourself.
Yeah.
If you don't use them, you don't know what people are talking about, and you very quickly will lose being current. And, I think, I mean, I am a little bit older, so, you have to work a little bit harder to actually remain current. And that means just being, a learner, day in, day out. Every day is day one, you got to think every day is day one.
Yeah, I love that, because I'm going through the same thing where I'm running the Instagram account for Capital Art as well. So I'm totally understanding the challenges around that, and picking up different trips, tricks and tips around how to schedule posts is something that I learned, which I think is very useful. Yeah.
I just wanted to share quickly. I said the sayings that my mom had, because they were so great, and I think you guys will like them. Okay, so one thing she said was like, smile and wave, and that goes to like, and when life gives you lemons, right? She was originally British, born in Britain or whatever, but she has a South African passport. Anyway, she always said smile and wave, and I thought that was such a nice, exactly. Yeah, I see in the chat now. That was such a nice thing, because sometimes you feel down and you feel like really like it's all overwhelming and it's on top. So just remember, smile and wave. And then the other thing she always used to say was, the dogs bark and the caravan moves on. And, again, like with social media and the noise around social media, and just watch this, you will see it play out every week. Somebody's, in a hot spot. And then she always used to say, the dogs bark and the caravan moves on. And then the last one that she used to say was, I've only ever wanted 2 words on my t-shirt, and those were, why not? So, I thought those were quite nice, sayings to just remember when life gives you lemons. And then my twins are 11, by the way, on Sunday.
Yeah, happy birthday to them. Yeah. Okay, Nolindi, I did see you had your hand up, but it's gone down now. I don't know if you do still want to ask anything else. Or if there's anyone else who has a question, please raise your hand, although I see we've got like 5 minutes to go, so try and get it in now before the time runs out. Otherwise, I've got plenty of questions, because I had quite a number to ask.
Thank you so much for noting my hand. Mine is to appreciate the incredible talk, sort of a motivation, because, there's a lot that has happened. COVID came, it killed most of the businesses, and I was also affected. And I managed to find another job. Now we are faced with retrenchment. So now it's post-COVID. So I think out of this conversation, I've been empowered how to handle things professionally, just not to be emotional, but to handle things, in a very matured manner, but to start all over again. Thank you.
Lovely to hear.
Yeah, I love that, Nolindi. It's great to have that positive mindset. And I think, Julie, you spoke about kind of this abundance mindset earlier on, and like how that also means that it actually brings a lot to you and you see the opportunities there. So Nolindi, that's exactly what it sounds like you're doing. And that's very, very inspiring as well. I think one thing which you just spoke about is having children. I'm in the category where I don't have children yet. I'm not too sure whether it's a yet or ever kind of thing, but anyways, and it would be great to just, I know you've got not much time left, but just to cast yourself back to being kind of a corporate leader before you became a mother and afterwards, and maybe like one or two things that you think about when you compare and contrast the experiences.
Okay, so I waited very long because I always had a lot going on from a work point of view and a travel point of view. And I remember like all my friends had kids and I just wasn't really ready thinking of myself as a mother. But when I did decide to have them, I had left it quite late. So I don't know if I said, but I was 44 when I actually had them. So you've probably got a lot of time, in other words.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think, it's really hard to say what's right for a person. But what I also realized is, children adjust to anything. So, I had a working mother, as you guys know, and I'm a working mother. And I do think that is the best role model for kids. Because first of all, I'm 100% and always have been financially independent. And I think for a woman, actually a man too, but let's just say for a woman, it's a personal choice to have kids. But I'm just so happy that I have options of my own. I have choices. I had a choice to have kids. It wasn't easy at the time because, obviously, as I said, I left it quite late. And now that I've had them for 11 years, it's broadened up the dimensions of experience that I've had. Has it changed me? Yes, it does. But it's a fundamental change. And I'm just really glad that I did have them. And there are lots of ways to have children. And there are lots of children out there to be had. And that's a whole nother fireside chat, but maybe another day. But I just think that the one thing I realized with before and after is, you can surround yourself with support if you are a working mother, and you can do both. But it is tiring, but it's so worth it. And the thing is that it's not the kids that are going to resent having a working mother. Like I cannot remember one moment resenting my mother for working, but it's the fact that you will lose out if you are only a working mother that never has any time to experience what the kind of the fun part of having kids. And I think that's what post-COVID has given us. I remember before COVID happened, we always in our business, which was mostly women, by the way, we had like 10 men and the rest were women. So we constantly went through this debate of how do we have like hot desks and how do we allow people to work who had kids or didn't have kids or adopted a kid, or it was, maternity leave for us was always a little bit longer than what was expected because we supported women, right?
Yeah.
But so I think the thing is that nowadays businesses have to accept that you work from wherever. If you work at all times of the day, like your brain never switches off anyway if you're an entrepreneur. And it's all about showing up and showing up properly. So do whatever you do properly. But it doesn't mean that you have to give up one, for another.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that everybody wants that either. So I always think, it's a personal decision. But it did change me post-COVID and the way I can be with my kids because of the way the world now operates, which I'm very, very grateful for.
Awesome. Hey? No, that's really, thanks for that. That was kind of one question which I was just remarking on, because I think a lot of people grapple with that as a decision and how they think it will impact their careers. Absolutely.
Yeah.
This has been an amazing time. I know you kind of had a hot stop at 7, but I thought just to quickly kind of cover some of the points that you mentioned, having role models, and you were so incredibly fortunate that was your mum in the office as well. But I think it's about all of us like looking out there for who could be our role models, having a sense of humor, the key thing you learned from Joan Rivers, how reputation is everything. You never know where a meeting might end up, nothing is a waste of time. Sleep on the hard decisions so that you can process them properly to get to the right decision. Less is more when sharing hard decisions, and then joining global networks. And also don't remain peripheral in these types of organizations, and network in a way that's comfortable for you. And I think the last one is kind of, be yourself, and I think be authentic. And that's something which has just totally come through. So it's been an absolute pleasure to have had this fireside chat. I see there's a number of people who wrote in the chat to just say thanks very much for this. Thanks again to Haiba for this fantastic time, and for Vani to just kicking us off and getting us into this mind frame around rebound and reinvention. So thanks again, Julia, for this amazing chat.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me, and lovely to meet you guys.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
For the first time in South Africa,
a live performance mid-flight at 30,000 feet. To kick off this groundbreaking innovation is 27-year-old Divine Mahara. This is also the former Zimbabwe's Got Talent winner's first ride on a plane ever.
Life is a journey. We are all traveling. Kure kwanda kabai koi. Here I have been traveling. Life is a journey. We are still traveling. Kure kwandi do endai koi. We are all still traveling. Kanango mayorira natso terera iwe. Voda izira ngome natso pembera. Upenye udukuduku mwanawe. Break a leg, my friend. Kanango mayorira natso terera. Kanango mayorira natso terera iwe. Voda izira ngome natso pembera. Upenye udukuduku mwanawe. Break a leg, my friend. Kanango mayorira natso terera. Life is a journey. Yeah, we are all traveling. Kure kwanda kabai koi. Here I have been traveling. Oh, life is a journey. We are still traveling. Kure kwati no endai koi. Yeah, we are all still traveling. Kanango mayorira natso terera iwe. Voda izira ngome natso